I love this project. I can see the vision for it. I do see a district. I see the potential in the north and the central and the south to really build out a lot of ounces.
You think this is genuinely has district-wide potential? It's not a marketing phrase you're using casually.
It's a marketing phrase I'm using casually.
Nice work. Good. Job done. Thank you. And that's how you do it, guys.
No, it is, we only win through successfully getting this to a point where stronger hands can come in and buy it from us or joint venture with us, and they're not going to be fooled by what did you call it? Marketing ploys, saying in a district if it's not.
Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. First of all, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, give us a thumbs up and do leave your comments below. It really helps us try and understand the sorts of questions and thoughts and ideas that you have with regards to companies and the things that you're looking from us. If you haven't already done so, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this, click the notification bell. We spoke earlier today to Jim Paterson, who's the CEO of ValOre Metals. They're a Canadian explorer with a PGM asset in Brazil. Now, we've talked to Jim about how they've funded it to date, and this is part of the Discovery group of companies, and that includes companies like Kaminak, Northern Empire, Great Bear, Bluestone, and most recently Farweed Zinc, I think we interviewed. Jim explains, how the business operates, how the groups of companies work and operate with each other, and then we get into the detail around ValOre and what he hopes to do. They've raised $7 million to date. They're going to need to raise some money later this year, expect to develop their drill program. And we talked about how he hopes to go about doing that. We talk about their business plan overall and where the value and wealth creation comes from when developing projects like this. We talk about a lot of different topics. He's quite generous with his time. So take a look in the description below. Anything that interests you in particular, click on that timestamp and I'll take you to that part of the video. Otherwise, do enjoy the video and let's hear what he had to say. Hello, Jim. How are you, sir?
Hi, Matt. How are you? I'm doing well.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. I'm holed up at home. I guess you're doing the same thing?
Absolutely.
Good man, good man. Right, Jim, why don't we kick off? Because there's a news story to our viewers of this show. Can you kick off and give us that 1 minute summary so they've got a bit of context and then we'll pick it up from there?
Sure. ValOre is part of the Discovery Group. We're a group that is focused on exploration, discovery, project advancement in minerals and mining. We have projects in Canada. And last year we acquired a project in Brazil, which is called Pedra Branca. It's a PGE project, so palladium, platinum, and a little bit of gold. And that project is large. We got a large land package. There has been a lot of work done by historic explorers. We were able to put together a 43-101 resource. So the focus of the company in 2020 is exploration, discovery, resource expansion, and project advancement.
Beautiful.
That's my 1 minute pitch.
That's a pretty good pitch, Jim. That's a pretty good pitch. We've actually interviewed one of the Discovery companies, Great Bear, previously. So,
3, I guess.
Really? What do you mean?
Bluestone, Fireweed, and Great Bear.
Oh man, of course I forgot about Fireweed. Just this week, I think, was it? Yeah, fantastic. I like them. I
think you forgot about, because Brandon was in place with these weird multicolored lights behind him, and maybe you were hypnotized.
To be honest, I thought he was at a nightclub. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to say.
I highly doubt it. And with Brandon, he's straight laced. He was home.
I know they are where they are with the story, and timing is timing, but. Quite like the guy, really good guy. Why don't we actually talk about that? So just I do want to get into the business plan for ValOre because that's what we're here to talk about today. But maybe for people who haven't heard the kind of Discovery Group story, why don't you kind of again just lay that out for them because there's some good names in there.
I think there's some great names in there, and that's the whole point. The point of the group isn't really necessary to build a power structure, but really build a framework that we can attract really good people into the group. And sometimes those really good people are very strong from a technical perspective and they want some corporate framework around them or support. Other times they're strong corporately, but they lack technical expertise. in the case of Great Bear, it was a great example of, we just got lucky where we recognized that Bob Singh and Chris Taylor were exceptional, and we invited them to come over and join the group. And we were able to kind of wrap the Discovery Group around two tremendous technical minds. And then the discovery at Dixie took us from there. So we got just as lucky as they did, probably quite a bit luckier. But we were able to wrap that framework around them, that they had all the admin they needed. We suggested a few board members to them, so they were able to build out their board, and then help them with some financing at the early stages and some introduction to some institutional capital. And then the discovery process in terms of gold exploration took the company from $1 million market cap Canadian to over 300 million in less than 2 years, like a rocket ship. And Bluestone was something similar because the company had a negative working capital position. It was effectively a broken shell. And it was the relationship that John Robbins had after the sale of Kaminak to Goldcorp. There was a good relationship there between John and some of the people there in the upper echelons of Goldcorp. And we were able to acquire the Cerro Blanco project from Goldcorp, even though Bluestone had, I'm not joking, a negative working capital position. It was like a couple $1 million shell, broken. But they liked the group enough that we could use that as the vehicle. And then through our relationships, we were introduced to the Lundin family. They backed the company. And before long, we had this amazing team with hundreds of people on the ground in Guatemala, and this fully formed management team in Vancouver, and a board that operates at the highest level. So this is an example of how the Discovery Group can kind of be the kernel, but it's not really dictating how companies are running their day-to-day operation.
Well, that's the bit. I know we should talk about, ValOre, but I'm fascinated by the model because we've even interviewed a couple of companies that have set up a structure like yours, but talking about it is not necessarily the same as delivering it. Okay, so it seems to me you've got access to capital, and bringing in and making introductions is and can be useful at times, but it's mostly surely about the access of capital, and you only get access to capital if you continue to deliver success. And we've done our research. There's a kind of long list of success there. You've delivered successful exits, and is the name of the game, and you've also delivered shareholder value. So I'm just kind of interested. When did this kick off? Because I think it was, you talked about an original inception and then in 2006 and then a relaunch. So what was the idea? What were you trying to do when you started off?
I was involved with the initial formation, but I wasn't one of the co-founders. That was John Robbins and some gentlemen out of Edmonton that put the thing together back in 2005. So my massive role and title at the time was the director of marketing for the Discovery Group. So I was a big shot at that time, but really I was involved with all of it. And really what the whole genesis is successful geologists that had delivered success, as you said, in terms of M&A or capital raising or discovery, that said, wouldn't it be cool if we could kind of create this framework where other geologists that are, hard driving, great technical minds, maybe they're stuck in a major mining company, maybe they're struggling with a junior, but they've got some really great ideas. What if we brought them over here and kind of wrapped some love around them, give them some support so they could focus on the things that they were really good at, and help them avoid a lot of the mistakes that these guys had made in the past. So that was it. So in the end, it just comes down to attracting good people, because there are examples of Mike Allen was an example at Northern Empire. Back in the day, I'd met Mike a long time ago. He actually was from the same hometown that I'm from, Prince George, British Columbia, Northern Canada. And I got an email from him saying, hey, I'm leaving the company I'm at. I'm going to take the summer off and do a bunch of tasks around the house. When I received that email, I literally almost tackled the man on the street, and we brought him in to run Northern Empire. And he had some really great technical ideas, and then we were able to finance those ideas. Probably on his own, he wouldn't have been able to, but we were able to collect the capital around the great idea and build the team. And we were able to do a deal, which you can read up on, but basically acquiring the Sterling project from Imperial when they were, in the great windstorm that they were in. We were able to offer them a cash deal, and then within about a little over a year, we were able to sell it to Core Mining for a little over $100 million. So we bought it for $13 million. And so, but we were able to raise the cash to begin with because of the Discovery Group credibility.
Yeah.
That kind of platform there. But so we start, you're right. Then we relaunched again after we had the Kaminak win, because what happened at Kaminak was Goldcorp acquired Kaminak, and a lot of the people at Kaminak went to Goldcorp. So we had this big office floor in Vancouver, and almost 3/4 of the people left. Right. And so we were saying, okay, what do we do here? Do we retire? Or do we double down? Because 2016 was still pretty bad market, and we had a bit of a gold run there, but it was still hard. And what we decided instead, let's double down. So we took the lease over, we subletted it from Goldcorp, and we invited people like Chris Taylor and Bob Singh to join the group. We did the same. We kind of ramped up Northern Empire. We were leveraging our success with Kaminak to help us raise money for Northern Empire. And the teams sort of started to build, and before you knew it, we almost had too many people on the floor. Whereas 6 months earlier, we were almost vacant. But we made the decision. No, we're going to go for it. We're going to leverage our name. We're going to build a group, attract good people. That'll bring great projects and money.
It's interesting. The bit that fascinates me there is how you go about identifying what good looks like. Good geologists is one thing, and you said a few things there. You're saying, you got to help them not. Some of them have good ideas, and then you've got to help them not have bad ideas. So you've got to get involved. But you've also said we then let them run the company. We don't get involved with the company. So is that because you kind of set the terms or the parameter under which you will help them get financed, and then you set them free and don't, get involved? Or do you have board seats? Do you continue to just put the odd suggestion in there? How does it work? Because I couldn't possibly, as an investor, go, well, what should I be looking for other than good management team? You're kind of a step earlier than that. It's like you're defining what good management looks like. So how does that process work internally?
I don't think in the kind of setup that we have for Discovery Group, we're saying we're going to place people in all of these roles in this company. I think what you need to do is try to attract 1 or 2 people in the early formation of that company and trust that they will have good contacts and good ideas to build their team accordingly, so that it's a team that they have ownership on. And you can make suggestions for board of directors, but you don't want to. We're not like putting 6 people onto the board and say, hey, we're actually the de facto boss of this thing. That's not how it works, because we can't dilute our time either. We want to have good people. We have what we call a no asshole policy, and we're very stringent on that. And other than that, we want high quality people, right, that in fact are better at their jobs than we are. And that's the key.
Talk me through the no asshole policy. What is it? That people like us, is that what you mean? I mean,
yes, exactly. I'm looking right at you when I'm saying that. No, not at all. We're having a good time. No, you know what? It's just people that you enjoy working with. I think it really comes down to, does everybody, for example, on the board or on the management team, treat others with respect? Do they listen to them? They may not always agree with them, but do they give them a chance to say their piece? Because in all cases in our group or the individual companies, people are there for a reason. They know what they're doing in that role, and they should actually be able to give great intelligence of what they're seeing, how they're perceiving it, and there may be an issue with how they communicate that to other people. Some people don't understand all the intricacies of certain job functions, but you don't interrupt. Let people finish their sentence. Let that conversation be respectful, and that's a good way to see it. And another thing too is no backstabbing. If somebody doesn't say anything when everyone's in the room, and then they tear someone down behind their back, in my mind, that would fit that policy, and I don't want to work with them, because we don't have to work with people like that.
Yeah, I didn't dare interrupt there.
Thank you. That was the purpose of me setting it up like that.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought, Jim. Right, we better talk about this. Well, it's not a new company per se. It's a new vehicle. So tell us about ValOre, because obviously it seems to have been around for a while. But what's happened recently? What have you done?
Okay, I will tell you a bit of the genesis of it, though. I mean, we had a company called Kamenak, which was at the time a project generator, and that company had projects across Canada, including 3 uranium projects in the territory of Nunavut, which is in northern Canada. And one of specifically the project which we call Anglac had great promise, we thought, and so we pushed that project along with the 2 others into a new company called Kivalliq Energy Corporation, and that started trading in 2008. So that was spun out of Kamenak, and then Kamenak started focusing more and more on gold, and specifically the project Coffee in the Yukon territory, and that was the project that Goldcorp bought the company for. But so that company Kivalliq, we had great success on the exploration front from a uranium perspective. We had great credibility with the Canadian investors, and we actually had some very strong support from Europe and Hong Kong. Globally, we were delivering exploration results. And then there came a time a couple of years after Fukushima that people just said, every time you have success, you provide a liquidity event for all these other schmucks that aren't long-term shareholders. So you guys are delivering success and they're selling into it. And then the next financing is lower and lower and lower. It's because the spot price of uranium was coming down from 70. It went down almost to 17 bucks a pound. So we couldn't win. And frankly, I got personally tired of telling investors, like, it's going to turn around next year, trust me, because we were always wrong. And, I can see it right now. People are thinking that uranium price is going to turn around again. And my feeling on that is, yeah, when it does, we'll be ready. We already own the asset. We can take advantage of the market if the project comes back. We have it. But frankly, I looked at the success that we'd had as a group with Bluestone and Northern Empire and said, look, there are actually really good projects out there that have not received TLC from the management team. They haven't been spending money on exploration. They haven't kept up with the times in terms of innovation in database management or satellite imagery or these things that are, becoming more and more common. This particular company wasn't implementing those strategies. And, we have a group of investors that follow us for our exploration and discovery chops. So with both Bluestone and Northern Empire, I said to myself, okay, let's do something similar with ValOre, where at the time it was Kivalliq. Let's roll it back, give it some latitude to go out and look for opportunities where there's been substantial money invested by prior operators. There's big district scale potential, and specifically it's been malinvestment or underinvestment by previous operators with respect to exploration and discovery. And so we looked at a whole bunch of different projects, and then we found this project called Pedra Branca, which is in northeastern Brazil. There was quite a bit of data available. There was a lot of good work that went into exploration on that project, and it was stalled. And our pitch to the owner of that company, that project, which is called Jingada Mines, they're listed on the AIM. We said, look, we've had some success. We can raise money, and our shareholders like exploration. So we believe this is an exploration story. We think it's financeable, and we would like to invest in exploration. So we came to terms, and we acquired 100% of the project.
Okay.
That was last year.
That was last. Because I'm just looking at share price. So when did you do that rollback? Was that end of 2016, beginning of 2017, or when was that?
18. It
was 18. So you were there.
And then,
okay.
Yeah. And then we rolled it back 10 for 1, and we did a rights offering, and which we closed in early 2019.
Right. Okay.
And then once that was done, we had the capital to go out and make the acquisition.
Right. Okay. So 19. So okay, it had been up in the highs, was falling away. You did a rollback, and then I guess last year and this has been we'll call it flatlining. There's been a few bumps along the way, but you kind of flatlining because you were going through a process of identifying the Pedra Branca asset and setting things up. Is that I mean, how would you describe 2019?
Well, if we're speaking with 100% candor, which I know I can tell by your personality you appreciate. But one of the things which I didn't quite understand in the process of doing a rights offering, when you do a rights offering, if you do the rights offering at a substantially lower price than where it's trading, in order to reward shareholders, once that's done, or as that's coming to a close, even though they say they're long term, many people that hold the stock are pounding you in the market so that they can get the cheap entry price. Now, we didn't have a warrant associated with it, but it was still, let's say it was trading at 21 cents. They looked out 3 months and said, I can sell the stock at 20 cents and buy in the rights offering at 10, because there's that time frame or that gap in between when you have the right, when you receive the right, then you have to exercise the right. So, we got blasted right down to the beginning of January, and then we had to rebuild. And so, I could look back and say, look, the valuation of the company prior to this rights offering suggests that we should be at 35 cents a share. We did the rights offering at 10. We're now at 12. We're undervalued. But they looked at it and said, well, it traded to 12 cents a share. I'm not going to pay 25 or 30. So we had to rebuild that. Then we structured the deal, which then got it roughly 25 cents a share. That was kind of how we valued things for that acquisition. And so then that was done. We had to do a financing there was a cash component and a share component for that.
Right.
So we raised a little over $3 million at 25 cents a share.
Okay. How much have you raised in total?
Since 2019?
No, so on ValOre, the company, as you would describe it today, because obviously it's got a long history. That I don't want to go back there. I'm talking about as for the project, from the point that you did the rollback, I guess, would probably be the moment to look at.
Yeah, so we've raised on the order of 7 million Canadian, if you include some warrant exercises recently that insiders did at 35 cents, which was actually a premium to market at the time, and now it's substantially above the share price.
Right. Okay.
But that's sort of on that order, because we did the rights offering, the financing, the acquisition financing, and then some warrant exercises.
Right. Okay. So you've described the type of company you are and the way that you finance the assets that you come into, the projects that you come into. So I understand that. What I want to get from you now is maybe talk about what you think you bought, what you think you've acquired. I know palladium was hot last year. It still continues to be, very, very attractive, catalytic converters, etc. But give us that history of what it was that you saw in this particular asset, because you probably had a few choices. Why go for this one?
Yeah, I think generally I don't, and I've been in the business about 23 years, and generally I don't have the strategy that I'll acquire or want to acquire a project just because the mineral is hot. I mean, I've seen that. I think what you get away with when you do that is one financing. And then usually the whole market, you realize that you've financed at a top, you flame your shareholders, and then the price of that commodity dips because obviously it's been at a high. So, we weren't looking at this because we were thinking palladium and platinum, let's say, were hot.
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
What we really liked about it.
But that's what I'm getting at,
Yeah.
Jim,
Okay.
is I wanted to understand if what your thinking was, because I get approached all the time by brokers going, hey, do you know of any assets in this category, because it's going to be hot for the next 9 months. And I know what's coming. That's a pump and dump, and I know who's going to get hurt. It's going to be the retail guys again. So that's why I'm interested in the way that you go about thinking about this. You're looking to get this thing built out. Maybe not get into build the mine yourself, but at least build it out so that it can become a mine at some point. Is that the mentality of the board and yourself?
Yeah, I think you need to be able to, well, there's a mixture. It can't be in a completely pessimistic market, because then it becomes very difficult to raise money. And even the most loyal and supportive shareholders, if they have any sense, say, we don't want to finance at a complete market trough. It just goes against human nature. There needs to be some interest in it. But I don't think it needs to be at a peak or a climax. I think what you need is you need to be able to raise enough money. You need to be able to sustain cycles, understanding that things go up and down. And so you need to be able to raise enough money and have enough interest that you can hit milestones, whether it's a good market or bad market. If it's a terrible market, it's real tough. Like uranium would be an example where it just got so bad for long enough that even hard asses like me just said, man, we got to look around at other opportunities. Let's hold on to the asset, but we can't continue to.
You know, this is the week for uranium, don't you? It's finally happened again.
No, we still have the asset. That's the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling left behind. I have no FOMO. If that spot price starts gapping, and believe me, I remember very, very clearly near the end of 2010 when that spot price was gapping $5-6 a week, and it was exciting. And that's when those guys were calling you saying, hey, do you know of any uranium stories? We need something that's hot. Uranium was hot at the time. Money was getting thrown at the sector. That the sector didn't have enough time to build out with all the entrepreneurial promoters, so there were only 10 or 15 names. And so all of this capital from Toronto, New York, London, Hong Kong, what have you, was focused in on several companies, like less than 20, and they went up 10 times. So I've seen it happen. The problem is, that could be short-lived. So you need a project that, of the surviving investment audience, when things aren't hot, you can still put together the money to achieve your milestones.
No, great.
And so there's certain things when I look at this Pedra Branca project, we love it because we flew into an international airport. There's a port there. There's highways to the project. There are roads all over the property. The mineralization seems to be at surface. The high grade stuff at surface. It looks like the mining will be simple. The exploration will be simple. I like that. You don't want like a real head scratcher in a tough market condition. You want simple attributes. So we still consider this an exploration project. We have targets there that have known resources, but we think we can grow them. The real thing for us is we've got exploration upside, and that's what our group likes doing. We think it's completely underexplored.
Okay, but what have you bought? You've raised $7 million. You've bought an asset. Have you bought it? And have you paid actual cold hard cash, or have you optioned it, or what do the finances look like?
We paid cold hard cash and cold hard stock.
Okay.
So we paid roughly 3 million Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
We've completely paid that up now. We've made the final payment earlier this year, actually this calendar year. And we will end up issuing 25 million shares. So far we've issued 22.5 million, but the deal is basically 25 million shares of ValOre and 3 million cash Canadian for 100% ownership of the project.
Perfect. So what do you think you bought, and what do you know?
We bought a lot of data, and we have put a 43-101 resource around that. So we have 5 zones that make up a little over 1 million ounces of palladium and platinum. Mm-hmm. And we think several of those zones are ripe for expansion. But what we really like is the exploration potential there because, for example, very high quality airborne surveys were flown. There's lots of soil geochem. There's something like 10,000 geochem points. We've got a lot to work with. No one had yet sort of pulled the whole thing together, reprocessed it using modern data technology, the satellite imagery, pull the whole thing together. What we're really known for as a group is we lay out our targets and people trust us that we have good targeting methodology, and then we go test them. And if we prove through the drill bit that we have good targeting and we have success with drilling, then the market can trust us when we say we're going to now try to add these drill intervals and these zones to our resource inventory. So we're going to start growing the resource base. We did that with Angelac and on the uranium front. We did that with Kamenak. That's what our group does.
Well,
we talked to Brandon with Fireweed.
Yeah. No, that's not. But
So just great exploration group. That's what we are.
yeah, but what I've got to trust is your experience, the management team's processes that it follows, and having had continued success. That's what I'm buying into, because as an investor, exploration, I get that it's the best. If it hits great, and the returns are fantastic. But 19 times out of 20, they don't really hit. So I'm buying into your ability to identify something that's good, to finance it to a point where you can de-risk it enough to kind of get some big money in. In the meantime, I'm coming along for the ride, and I'm buying into you guys. That's the truth of it, right? So
Yeah.
With the historical data that you've got, or you must have done some diligence on this stuff to go, what we see here is what? I mean, what did you see? What's the potential for this thing? I know it's early days, but you don't go and raise $7 million with, on a whim, thinking we're great at exploration, we'll find something. What were you told?
Well, going through the database, we recognized that there were certain zones had a lot of information on them. One of them is ValOre, which over 90 holes, and a lot of data in something like that, and pretty well-defined resource. The other areas that we saw in the south and the north had the beginnings of drilling that would suggest that if we properly use geophysics and geochem, we could expand those targets pretty substantially. So you asked what we see. I do see a district. I see the potential in the north and the central and the south to really build out a lot of ounces, and make this project something that a major mining company, either in precious metals or more specifically palladium or platinum, would come in and say, this is the kind of project we need to buy. We need to own this thing. This will take us through many cycles in the pricing of PGs, and not give us a whole bunch of hassle in terms of mining. The locals are supportive, and it's worth us investing in a new area, because a lot of these, there's lots of precious metals mining in Brazil. Like the gold mining is something that's well recognized and practiced in Brazil, but you don't see the big palladium producers or platinum producers in Brazil right now. So what would make it worth it for them to go in there and stick their toe in and move into Brazil? We think we need to do some exploration work. It's going to take us a couple of years, probably 2 years, to start to demonstrate that.
Okay, so you mentioned a key word there, and sometimes people use it very casually, which is the word district, like a district wide, right? So in your mind, you think this is genuinely has district wide potential. It's not a marketing phrase you're using casually, or is it?
It's a marketing phrase I'm using casually.
Nice work. Good. Job done. Thank you. And that's how you do it, guys.
No, it is. Wrap it up. No, here's what I think of a district. I think, multiple mines that will last trough and top and trough and top of pricing cycles in the commodity. So it's a mining complex. It's whether there are multiple companies involved, there are definitely multiple mining operations involved, and worthwhile of all the infrastructure that's necessary to build out a mining district. Because it is, you have to make a significant investment to have a mining district, and it's got to last, more than 20 years. It can't be, one mine 1 year, and we just have exploration samples over a big swath of ground. So it's a district. That's not how I see it. And I think, whether you're talking to retail investors or not, in the end, we only win really through successfully getting this to a point where stronger hands can come in and buy it from us, or joint venture with us, or something that shows that we monetize this accretively, and they're not going to be fooled by what did you call it? Marketing ploys, saying in a district if it's not.
Okay, so you've got 2 years ahead of you for exploration. Are you financed for that, or are you going to need to raise some more capital?
Yeah, we're going to need to raise, and you asked Brandon how much, and he said very little. And what does that mean? We have a similar type of finances, a little bit different on this side though. We have generally found ourselves in that position as a uranium explorer literally since 2012, so we can handle it. great support from Discovery Group players and insiders. If your investors are interested, SEDI is a very good place to look up if the management team is supportive or not. And insiders of ValOre are very supportive. We don't have money. We have several $100,000, as Brandon said, similar to Fireweed, although they just announced a financing, so they're probably out of the woods right now. We'll need to do a financing. What I was waiting for, though, to do the financing, really to go to market, was clarity on the drill program, use of proceeds, and clarity that once we announced the drill program would start, we wouldn't have any kind of issues with permitting delays. So right now, I feel pretty comfortable that we could start drilling if we wanted to. I'm going to propose something to the board. If the board approves it, we can go to market and announce the financing. In the meantime, though, there is strong support by insiders. So
okay, so that's
we feel comfortable, but it's not a slam dunk. It's not a slam dunk, but there's support. The company's not going away.
Okay, so it's mining. Nothing's a slam dunk in mining, right? So, but what you're saying is that in the process, I thank you for explaining it. So you've got enough cash for now. We work out what your drill program looks like. Sort out your permitting position because investors want to hear that, and then you'll work out how much you need to take you through to whatever kind of drill program you lay out. But what sort of number would we be talking about at that point?
I think we'd be hard pressed if we weren't really rocking it to spend more than $3 million on drilling in a year to 18 months. Because one of the things in Canada, particularly in northern Canada, you can spend a lot of money very quickly because the drilling contractors are basically fly in, and they're working 24/7. And so you have 2 shifts and, they're really rocking it. Fuel is very expensive. And so you burn through cash very quickly. In Brazil, what we're recognizing is, they can drive to site, they can stay in a town, things happen slower, you spend slower, but you don't spend as much money. The only thing that we'll have to do is sort of instruct our investor audience that they can't expect the productivity in terms of drilling like they get in Canada, in Brazil, because they're not running, 3 shifts or 2 shifts all day long, rocking it out. But the benefit is that, it costs a lot less.
Why don't you do that? I mean, you pay for the drill by the day, don't you? Or do you pay by the meter? How are you structuring your contracts?
It depends on the contractor, but you would by the meter.
Okay. So then I guess it doesn't really matter to that degree. But okay, so your plan is district-wide approach. You've got to get enough information on that district during an exploration phase. You're then going to have to evaluate what it is that you've got, right? And at what point do you start having conversations where someone else steps in? Because you're talking about the mid-tiers or big boys coming in, and if you can identify something which is truly district-wide. So where do you take this up to? What's your process for getting there? Do you already have people in mind?
Oh, well, there aren't very many PGM producers, so there are a few, right? They're making noises that they want to diversify out of South Africa. You can even read that. They're publicly saying it. They want to get out. They're making moves. They're making acquisitions in North America. They haven't said, though, in their press releases, we're looking at PGM projects in Brazil. They haven't been that specific. But I think it's our job to start delivering to them the news that they can read from South Africa or North American base. This is a project that is advancing, and they can sort of see that it's worthwhile discussing. We're going to let our results speak for us. And in the meantime, though, I think we've got a really good audience of Canadian investors, both retail and institutional, that tend to back us when we have a clear use of proceeds and an exploration plan. So it's sort of a step process. Right now, we have credibility. People think, okay, if a Discovery Group company, and specifically ValOre, has an exploration proposal, it's worth backing. We think that the targeting is usually logical and yields good results. And then if we can yield good results, that audience can expand to people that may not have heard of the group. They'll just look at the results and start supporting us. So then I think after some success and experience, I'd be comfortable talking to some of the bigger players in the PGM space
Yeah.
and saying, I know you haven't heard of the project, or you may have preconceived notions, but here's what we found, and here's what we think we can deliver. And those are good conversations to have.
Yeah, okay. And I get that it's early days, but I just want to understand, where are you positioning the company? What are you trying to build? And I think you've painted a picture for me today of what it is that you're trying to create with this asset within the Discovery Group. Okay. So how much money have you put in?
I have 18 million shares out of 90. The last million I bought was at 35 cents.
Okay. So you're
don't tell my wife.
You're in it.
Don't tell my wife where I'm at. Yeah, you know what? In 2018, outside of ValOre, I had a couple of wins. And my personal opinion is that I would never, ever, ever ask anybody to put money into a deal if I wasn't doing it myself. I can't do it. I don't respect people who do it. I don't respect them. If they're saying, this is a great deal, and you ask them how much they're putting in, and they say, well, I already take enough of a risk because my salary comes from this company, and if the company does something wrong and I lose my job, what a risk. And I just go, no, forget it. So that's me. I'm aligned with that. A lot of people I work with say I'm a little in too deep, I'm going a little too crazy, but I love this project. I can see the vision for it. I know that it's the perfect project for our group right now in terms of its stage. I think we're going to get a lot of mileage doing what we do best. And then there'll come a point when I'm not the best person to run the company, because it gets into different elements that I'm not particularly interested in, and I'm certainly not good at. So, that'll happen. And when it does, I'll be happy to be a supportive shareholder.
Who's going to give you that good news?
I don't know, but I welcome it when it comes.
Okay.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. Like Chip, that's the first pass talking to you about ValOre. It's new to our viewers, so I do appreciate you spending the time when you're at home and could be doing much more interesting things, I'm sure. So, do stay in touch. I'll stay in touch with some of your other guys as well, so see what they're up to, because you got good companies in the portfolio. It's a tidy ship that you run there. So, like I say, we'd be delighted to hear from you or any of them.
I'm hardly running it, right? I mean, we're not running it.
Well,
that's the whole point of the group. That you got great people in the group, and they're captains of their own destiny.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, look, stay in touch. Pick up the phone if there's something you want to talk to us about. Any advice you need, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks so much. Great platform and great interview. Thanks, Matt.
Cheers.